There's a reason why you're here as a board member for Love Inc. There are things and pieces that God has placed in your life over time that now is all coming together, and it makes sense for you to be on the board. God has got a reason for you to be on the board of executive directors with your background. My personal background, my education, I have my bachelor's in business marketing emphasis and some management. My experience, I've worked as I taught statistical analysis for MSU as a grad student for a while. And then I worked in systems and econometric projections for a while for the governor's office over there. And then I was in IT for many years. Then I took a pre-retirement to raise my daughter, and then got my counseling degree from Trinity Seminary, and then worked in a church for 5 years in charge of congregational care ministry development, and then somehow landed in the executive director position with Love Inc. So, kind of such a hodgepodge at any one of those stages. Why was that going on? But you could see how God was building things. I could see how God was building things for right now. And you can all see that in your lives. The things that you bring to the table as board members and as leaders and as executive directors for Love Inc., there's a reason why all this was in your life. There's a place and a time for you to use all that now. So we're going to work on that tonight. This is a workshop. I've complained about that before, but it always falls on deaf ears that my sessions always fall after meals. But hopefully we'll all stay awake and we'll have a good time together. I'm going to wander around and shake things up a little bit while we're talking. So be prepared. If your eyes start to droop, I'll appear in front of you. All right, this is the class, board and executive directors working together. You must work together. The objectives I have for this class is that you'll be able to clearly distinguish the responsibilities and expectations of both board members and executive directors. You'll both know what each other is supposed to be doing and help each other and understand each other's roles. In this class, we're going to work on a project together. We're also going to work on forming an actual, real, rough plan on how to handle and approach joint activities. This is not going to be theoretical. This is going to be the beginning of really doing this work. And then we're also going to become familiar with an annual joint project calendar. All right, let's look at this first page. I'm going to spend some time looking at the board members' tasks and responsibilities here. There are a lot of responsibilities, a lot of balls to keep in the air, like a juggler, just as the executive director has those. I've already talked to the executive director about their responsibilities, some of them in brief today. And now let's just go over some of these for you board members. First of all, first and primary is to know the mission statement. You can recite the mission as a board member in your sleep, right? Everybody close your eyes because we don't want any cheaters in here, but you do have to wake up again. Tell me what the mission is of Love Inc. Okay, that was pretty good. All right. If you couldn't get through that, and you're a board member, and especially if you're an executive director, but if you're a board member, and you could not get through that, please do learn it. You can learn it in like 3 pieces. Mobilize the church, transform lives and communities in the name of Christ. Mobilize the church, transform lives and communities in the name of Christ. Why must you know the mission? Why must you be focused like a laser beam on that mission as a board member? It directs everything we do. It directs everything you do. It guides everything you do, every decision you make. All your governance is going to be affected on whether or not we are going to make sure this is aligned with our mission or if it's out here. And a good question to ask if an executive director comes and proposes something to you as a board member, does this fit with our mission? It's got to fit with your mission. Because there are thousands of pressures and thousands of tugs out there to become something else, to transmogrify into something else besides Love Inc. You as a board member have the responsibility of keeping Love Inc. on track. You should have a board development toolkit. If you do not have one, you need to get one. And the best practices manual, that will help you rate and assess where your affiliate is at and what's going on. So just look at this. Each board member has responsibilities. You have spiritual responsibilities, legal responsibilities, financial responsibilities, resource development. I'm not going to go into all these because these were probably covered at the earlier class you were in today. Resource development, personnel, planning, continuity, policy decision-making, marketing and public relations. It should read marketing, not marking. And evaluation of what's going on. And there are bullets under there. You can read through all those. And by the way, that is your homework for tonight, board members. You get back to your motel, you should read your material, at least some of it. Get started on it. Try to get through this before you get home. As I said earlier with the executive directors, if you don't read this now, and before you get home, are you going to read it? If you're like me and like most human beings, probably not, because when you get home, life crashes in and all your other responsibilities. So this is your chance, this is your moment to get through it and become really familiar with what your responsibilities are and how to go about some of this stuff. I mentioned earlier, too, in the other class that I had attended a leadership conference, a week-long conference one time, where we were trained. It wasn't just go to stuff and listen to it, and isn't that nice, now I'm all psyched up. But it was training, and we had assignments, and every night we had to go back to our motel rooms and do them and finish them before we came to the next one the next morning. So I was up till 10:30 every night, reading and writing and doing all this stuff. But that was one of the best things, because when I left there, I had imbibed and I'd gotten all this stuff, and I can use it now when I get back. Rather than say, that was so good, I hope I can get to that, and it goes up on my shelf. So that's my pep talk for you. Read it, do it. Hopefully this is the space and the time where you can do that. Let's look at the next page there, where we've got the bossy person and someone prostrating themselves before them. Board members are to provide their time, talent, and effort to promote the Love Inc. affiliate, to develop policy, and to oversee the direction of growth. They are not there to micromanage the executive director and other staff. They are not there to expect the executive director to accomplish what is rightfully their own responsibilities. All right, board members? This is not what a board is about. We will have a think tank, and we'll come around this table, and we'll think up all these grand ideas, and then you, executive director, will do it all for us. That's not going to work. That's not going to work because of the physical limitations of the executive director, and you're shirking your responsibilities. Who knows what D&O insurance is? Director and officer insurance, right? Right? And that's to protect boards from being sued. Individual members of a board to be sued. Will an insurance company defend you, and will you be able to stand up to any attack or lawsuit if you've been negligent in your duty? No. There's no defense for that. The insurance will not cover it. So there's another little motivation to do your job. And that's especially important in your legal oversight and your fiduciary responsibilities. But it's everything. If you come to a board meeting and you're not getting from the executive director what you need in terms to be able to make a good decision, then obviously that's some negligence too. And likewise, if the executive director is not having the support and the energy and the activity and the time given by the board, the executive director can't do their job either. So we've got to work together. You see the four guys holding the key? Here's what board members bring to the affiliate, to the organization. The first guy, with it. They bring with itness. I know that's not a word, but they bring with it. They know what they're about. They're active, they're willing to do something besides just show up at the meeting unprepared and put in their hour and a half or whatever your board meeting is and then leave, say their opinions about things and then leave. They are with it. They know what the mission is too. They know at least one or two of the core values and can recite those. The second guy, they bring their wisdom and experience. Notice this is all holding up the key. This is key to the effectiveness of the Love Inc. The third guy, they bring their wealth. They bring wealth. Now, not every board member brings wealth, and I'm talking about financial wealth, but some do. And some bring other kinds of wealth, obviously, talents and so on. But there should be some on the board that do bring wealth. They're significant in that way. And why is it important to have one or two board members, or at least one, that's got some degree of financial resources? Why is that helpful?
Because they know how to budget.
They know how to manage their money. Yeah, they know about handling money. What else?
They're usually in connection with
Yeah. Wealthy people know wealthy people, and we're all about relationships. That doesn't mean you go out and specifically want to grab the millionaire in your community and put them on your board, you know. But think about that. There should be somebody on your board that is a little bit significant in their financial help. That is ideal, mostly because they know others and they know how to get to them, and they will talk. They will talk with each other. And also, the fourth one is they bring wallop. Now, each one of those four, everybody's got to be with it. Hopefully everybody brings their with them. Not all have wealth and not all have wallop. But hopefully you have that on your board. What might wallop be? Ability to get things done. And what else? Energy. Influence. Yep. When they say something, when they speak, people listen. Yeah, that adds some wallet. Yeah. All right, so board members, those are some of your responsibilities. Do at least read over that list on the first two sheets and your bullet lists underneath of those bullet points, all right? The board is incredibly important. I'm not going to reiterate what you've already heard, but the number one reason, whether it's Christian ministry, whether it's secular, the number one reason an organization will fail is failure or dysfunction on the part of the board. Now, it may be we had a lousy executive director. Whose responsibility was it to handle that problem? Yeah. And maybe the executive director looked lousy because they weren't getting what they needed from the board. You know, no, we're not going to pay you, work for free. You know, whatever. I've heard of the strangest stories. I have heard of an organization that was on the verge of failing and went to this seminar, and I know it because I was at the seminar, on how to be a better board, but went to this seminar. We don't understand why our organizations fail. Tell me about your board, the instructor said. Well, it's kind of difficult right now. What do you mean by difficult? Well, the president and the vice president are man and wife. Husband and wife. Yeah, bad. Nepotism. Glad you all gasped at that one. And they're going through a really ugly divorce right now. And they won't be in the same room with each other. So the one spouse stands at the door during the board meeting, and then they talk. And then if they want to say something, the other one gets out of the room and goes out, and the other one comes in and talks. I also heard of an organization that actually shut down because its board had, I can't remember the number, but it was like 4 or 5 attorneys on the board. Which is, you know, it's really wonderful to have any attorneys in the room. It's really wonderful to have an attorney on the board. It is. But how about just one? One is great. When you get 4 or 5, they're all sitting there constantly arguing everything that they know about legal perspectives and the organization shut down. They were fortunate about 2 years later they were able to restart. But dysfunction on the board, non-function on the board, all those kinds of things, the number one reason. But executive directors and board members must work together. Now look what expectations of board members are. Executive directors, this is what you can expect out of your boards. You can expect them to give their time, to carefully read all that material you prepare before they come to the board meeting. How can you make an informed decision and not waste others' time if you don't read that material beforehand? They will give their expertise to the governing of the organization and to help the executive director. They will share advice. They will provide leadership. They will seek to enhance the image of the organization in the community. They will give resources, contribute personally. If you are on a board of directors, you should contribute personally and not just with your time and talent. You should give something financially. It doesn't have to break the bank. It has to be something, because you're part of the ambassador force out there for your Love Inc., and you're expecting others to support it, and you won't. So board members do need to support it. And you know what? When My Love Inc. was I hate that phrase, My Love Inc. When the Love Inc. in Bozeman was starting, you could look at the financial supporters. Our annual report was about this big, front and back, folded like a bulletin kind of booklet. And on the inside, and I still have a copy of this, I love it, is the list of the financial supporters that got the affiliate off the ground. And there's this church, that church, this church, that church. And then there's a list of individuals. And most of the individuals were either on the development committee or the board of directors, the first board of directors that we had. And then there was a few others that believed in the vision too. And they got that Love Inc. started. So, that's just continued. That's how important you are as board of directors. Commitment, pray regularly for Love Inc. That means really pray for Love Inc. Yeah, prayer is important. I'll pray when we come to the board meeting. Pray for Love Inc. Ask good questions if something is unclear. Board members, I would like you, I had executive directors do this already, but board members, I would like you to look at those 4 major areas that are your responsibilities, and next to each one of them, time, expertise, resources, and commitment, I'd like you to sign your initials like you're doing a rental car agreement or something. You are affirming and committing that you will do these things. So please go ahead and do that right now. Okay, you're probably done, because if you were at the rental car counter, you would be done by now because you want those keys and want to get out of there. But take a look at those and read those. And make sure that's your commitment. That is your commitment to love in the name of Christ as a board member. Executive director responsibilities. Board members, they've already signed off on these. And you should be familiar what their responsibilities are, because you've been involved in hiring them. And if not, you're involved in supervising them, governing the affiliate, seeing to it that the executive director is doing these items. So they are implementers of your policies. They implement your decisions, but not all alone. You have to help. But take a look at those for the executive directors. I'm not going to go over those right now. But executive directors need to provide spiritual leadership, support the board, cultivate relationships, oversee the program and the delivery of services, manage personnel, which means, by the way, I was asked a very interesting question. I was at a dinner for a Christian school not too long ago. I was sitting at the table, and they, of course, when you work for Love Inc., everybody knows what you do. So they were asking me about how it works, because we have a position opening right now in our affiliate. And they asked if the board hires that position or if I make the decision. It is not my position that's open. It's another position that reports to the executive director. Now they're coming from a school and a board and a school idea, what they're used to. What is your answer, board members? Does the executive director hire this position, Or does the board make the decision? All in favor, executive director? All in favor, board? Yeah, you all pass. Okay, that's really important. You don't want to micromanage. This is the executive director's responsibility. Personnel, resource management, marketing and public relations. We work on that together, obviously, and fundraising we work on together. Let's look at the director's report to the board. This is the first area that I want to touch on where you work together on something. Each time you meet, and I would recommend monthly board meetings if you're up and running as an affiliate and you have the executive director in place, you should have monthly board meetings. And at that meeting, the executive director presents the board with a report of what's going on. And here in this report, you can see there are some important items that should be covered. Ministry outcomes in the sense of what is going on. Is anybody being served? How many clients were being helped? Do we know how many calls we got? How many referrals to agencies? Number of needs met? That's kind of important to know. If you're a board member, you want to know those things. Executive directors, you need to provide it to your board. If you're unclear about how to get that, stay tuned. We're going to talk about that in one of our upcoming classes. You want to report about church relations, maybe promotions, other things that are going on. But you want a report from your executive director. And board members, please read this. You know, laboring over and reviewing what I've done for the past month and putting it together in a report is labor intensive. It takes time to prepare for the board meeting and prepare the report. Please read it, board members. And then this helps you if at least you've read this, and if anything's unclear in the report, what should you do? Ask questions. That's part of your duty as a board member. And you will see places where hopefully you can help the executive director and say, we need more people on the promotions group or on the promotions committee because it sounds like you're getting overloaded here and we need some more manpower there to help that out. So it's really important, that report. The next page is a table of contents. And this to me is helpful. If you're a board member, you're going to get a lot of documentation in preparation for a board meeting, or you should, from the executive director. What do you do with it? Where do you put it? Here's one alternative, and I honestly think I still have some board members that do this. Not many, but I think I've got a couple. I think I know who they are. We won't mention names. They bring this month's material to the board meeting, and they're there at the board meeting with the material, and then I think they don't do it until they're out of the building. I think they throw it. That is not good board governance. It's not. So we need to organize the material. It's better to come to the meeting with it organized than to say, flip through the material. Now, what is that? Where is that? And you can put together a binder, a 3-ring binder. And what this table of contents shows is the divisions, the dividing things in your binder. And it's best to keep this from month to month and have it build up. Because then you don't have to keep turning to the executive director and saying, now what was that we decided last month? Or turning to the secretary and saying, could you go back and find what we decided? Because you've got it there. And you can go back 2 months and read it yourself really quickly. So consider these divisions and put together a 3-ring binder and do this. And then let's look at what's in there. The agenda for each meeting should be in a section. And one thing you might want to do, board members, is not rely totally on the secretary or the chair of the board to tell you everything to do. If you've taken on an item that you need to do and it fell under one of the items on the agenda, just write yourself a note right there and star it or circle it or something that you need to do that for the next meeting, by the time of the next meeting. But have your agenda there so you can look at it and refer to it. In another section, you could have your minutes. Another section, you could have the director's report from this month and past months. Any clearinghouse reports, special things going on in the clearinghouse. Another section, the financial reports. Another section, maybe committee reports. I'm not telling you you have to organize it this way, but this way will work. And it keeps you informed and organized and have everything at your fingertips. Who puts together the agenda? The executive director and the board chair. And usually, very much on a nitty-gritty level, the way it works out is the executive director is going to pretty much put it together, check with the chair. Is there anything else you want on this? Do you want anything changed? How does this look? Put this on there, put that on there. We need time for this, whatever. Comes back to the executive director, puts that together, and it's part of your packet. That's typically a way it'll happen. You should get your materials. See all these items here? These kinds of items should be in the hands of the board members, executive directors. It should be in the hands of your board members well before the meeting. Let me tell you a little bit about that. We used to have our board meetings on the first Tuesday of the month. Part of what we need to prepare here are reports of statistics of what went on the month before in the clearinghouse. That meant the first Tuesday of the month I had to have all the statistics completely compiled and ready and printed and in, but I had to get this stuff in the hands of the board well before the meeting so they had a few days to read it. Guess what that did to my stress level? Huge. One day I woke up and said, why are we doing this to ourselves? In other words, really, why am I doing this to myself? But why are we doing this? Why not move the board meeting, if the board is agreeable to it, to the second Thursday of the month? And that would give some time to get all these statistics together and everything. Okay? So the agenda is put together, most of this packet is put together by the executive director. Except the minutes, who puts that together? The secretary of the board. Who puts the director's report together? Obviously the director. Clearinghouse reports, you will get that fed from your clearinghouse, from your operations. It's up to the executive director to compile it and put it together for the board. Financial reports, the executive director puts those together to make sure, to ensure that they're done. Now, the executive director, I think, for good accounting control purposes, is not also the person who keeps the books and also the person who writes the checks. Because even if you are the most highest integrity level person in the universe, that does not look good to donors, and it's just not proper. So you will have someone working on your books, but you better make sure, executive directors, you get those things printed out, you've got them there, and you've got them in the hands of your board members ahead of time, especially the treasurer needs it ahead of time. Okay? And then committee reports. Who's in charge of putting committee reports together? The committee chairs. And those are committees that, for your newly forming affiliates, those will be committees that you'll be forming, and they'll be like committees off of the board, where there'll be some board members on it, maybe some other people too, but those committees need to put those reports together. Typically, if the, it depends on your affiliate, but I don't think it's unusual to have, for these pieces that the executive director does not personally put together and write, but still everything kind of funnels to the executive director. The package before the board meeting is put together by the executive director and then given out to all the board members. Make sense? Okay. Speaking of the agenda, you have in your handout there a sample board agenda. There is also one in the board toolkit. The point of an agenda is to keep you on task, to make sure things are covered that need to be covered. Now, we'll take a look at this agenda and tell me if there's anything in it you think is maybe unusual compared to agendas of other groups or bodies that you've been on the board of. And I'm not saying you have to do this, but I think it's a healthy thing. Tell me if there's something on here that you is surprised by.
What's number 7?
Varia, miscellaneous. Like, did anybody else have anything else that we didn't have on the agenda? Now, you may not allow that. The chair may not allow that, but sometimes it's good. Like we're not opening it up for another 40-minute discussion. But was there something else? Oh yeah, remember everybody come to the whatever. But what else is on here that maybe you hadn't seen before?
The reflection evaluation.
Yeah, number 8, the reflection evaluation. That can be very helpful. Just a very brief, how did we do here? How did it go? Do we have unfinished business? Let's make sure we're all leaving on the same page. One thing you might want to do, not all boards do it, but one thing you might want to do, and it does speed things along, is approve draft minutes or action items before you leave. Secretaries of the board can read it off. These are the action items we decided on. So-and-so is going to check with blah, blah, blah. This committee is going to do this and that. We've asked the executive director to do da-da-da before the next meeting, and just run down those so everybody's leaving on the same page and has reviewed everything in their mind before you leave. We're going to save questions a little while. But do catch me. If you've got a question, do run me down and catch me. Okay, let's flip the page here. This is a fundraising best practice self-assessment from our best practice toolkit. What I'd like you to do now is to spend just a couple of minutes together, executive directors and boards, or just boards, whoever we have here, and clearinghouse coordinators and volunteers. But work on this together, because this is an area you will work on together. Executive directors and boards will need to work on fundraising together. Go ahead and discuss how your affiliate's doing in each of these 8 areas. And while you're discussing it, just say where you think you're really strongest and where you need a little bit more help, okay? So are you meeting it? I mean, is growth needed in that area? Are you doing it, or are you really excelling in it? And what I want you to rate as you do this is not just whether it's happening in your affiliate, but if you are working on it together. You and the executive director are working on it together. Okay? We're just going to take about 3 or 4 minutes on this. This is really a good measuring tool for self-assessment to see what you need to be doing. I understand as just newly forming affiliates, you're not going to be doing all these things right now. You're going to have growth needed in some areas. But I wanted to focus on some of these, on how you work together as an executive director and a board on these. Obviously, a fundraising plan developed by the board and the executive director to ensure adequate resources, that's one thing you're going to work on. Let's see this one. Donor privacy is maintained. Now, how would you both be working on that together? Just give me some ideas. How do you both work on that together? Boards? I can see the executive director making sure this is done. How does the board do it? The treasurer doesn't blab to the rest of the board, hey, you know who gave what? Yeah.
Right.
And the board may be occasionally asking, are those donation records secure? That's one thing how you might work together. How about this other one? Donors are kept aware and updated of Love Inc. ministry activities. Board, how does that involve you? That's a part of the fundraising plan. How does that involve you? What might you do for that?
Publicity, the newsletter and stuff.
Make sure the newsletter and publicity is going out. What else?
Make videos.
Maybe make videos, and the board may take that on as its activity with the executive director looking at it too. Yeah, what else?
Participating in personally contacting them.
Yeah, use your mouth.
Using your relationship.
Yeah, use your relationships, the people you know, and just tell them what's going on. Yeah. Sometimes maybe thanking donor that you had contacted. You know, we had talked about in the fundraising piece that the executive director calls and thanks some donors for their donations. How about if you've asked the person to give and then you ask the executive director, I specifically asked that person and I would like to know because I want to contact them and thank them, you know, then you could. Okay? So those are helpful if you feel comfortable doing that. But obviously there's things you can do together. You work on these things together. The next page, I really want to take a look at both sides of this. These are examples of the different areas that the organization will be working on together. And there will be separate individual activities, certain responsibilities that just the board does, certain responsibilities that just the executive director does, and then there's those places where you interface and you work together. So let's look at these together. First of all, broad stroke organizational goals. When you're working on organizational goals, Who approves? That word approve anything is a buzzword for whose responsibility? The board. And any verbs there that are oftentimes actual like operational implementation kind of verbs, those are all executive director. So organizational goals, approve the annual objectives, approve long-range goals. Oversee, that's another key board verb. Oversee, evaluating the programs and services. This is a good overseer evaluation. Question. Does this fit with our mission? Is it aligned with our core values? A healthy, strong organization, even a healthy, strong corporation, will make sure that its activities are aligned with its mission and its core values. And we've got several pastors, several churches in our area that even act that way with their churches. They run their churches that way. Is it aligned with our mission? Does it promote our mission? Is it aligned with our core values? If it's not, even though it may be wonderful and good and beneficial, it's not for us. Okay? That's really important. But jointly on organizational goals then, you see the things the executive director does. Assess client needs, direct process of planning, formulate annual objectives. The board approves them. So they come from the executive director, board approves them. Why would they come from the executive director and not from the board? The idea to start with.
They're the person on the front end.
They're on the front line. They know what's going on. They know where you need to work. They're doing this kind of stuff in their head, hopefully, all the time, assessing where you're at. So let's look at this first one, organizational goals. Where you work together, provide input to long-range goals together, monitor achievement of goals together. Turn the page over. Board functioning. What do you do together? Together you recruit new board members. Together you plan the agenda. Together you promote attendance at the board and committee meetings. It is not just the executive director's responsibility to say to the board members, please remember to come to the board meeting. Although that is one thing that they do, remember the board meeting. But it's also the chair's responsibility. So-and-so, you've missed the last 3 or 4 board meetings in a row. This is having a dampening effect upon the entire board. Is there something going on? Do we need to address this? You may even have a policy. You missed so many in a row and you haven't told us ahead of time, you may be dismissed from the board. Something like that. But anyway, it's a joint responsibility to promote that attendance at the board meetings. Each of you do it in a different way. And organize committees. Now, obviously the board organizes its own committees. How does the executive director get in that part? What might be their input?
Help staff.
Pardon?
Help staff.
Yeah, they may sit on the committee. They may help find people for the committee.
Are they ex officio?
Yeah, often they are. Again, that's your own policy, but usually they are.
I think there would be a wealth of knowledge to ensure that the committee is really being effective.
Inform and educate the committee. What about in the word organize the committee? How might the executive director be involved there, even though the board is forming committees?
Well, since the executive director's on the front line, he may or she may have access to information about what sort of a committee we might need.
Right. The executive director is on the front line, has been operating, and knows we need to really beef up this one area. We need more people in this area. I can't do all this. Delegate, delegate, delegate. We need to bring more people in the ministry. We need to mobilize the church more. And we need this area beefed up. Yeah. So we need, board, we need this kind of committee. And then there'll be good discussion about it and how to form it and how to organize it.
I think when we think of delegating, too often we think about delegating down. We need to remember as executive directors that you could delegate up.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to mobilize the boards too. Finances and fundraising. Together, you develop and carry out fundraising campaigns. Together, you solicit contributions in fundraising campaigns. We heard an example in the previous class about a place where you were obviously together soliciting funds. It was real obvious. Your name as a board member was even on it. Do you remember what that was? The letter, the ask letter. Yeah, you can do it that way. But there's other ways too, yeah. And finally, in staffing, together you'll review periodically your organizational structure, develop performance appraisal tools. You can work on that together. All right, let's take a look at this chart. I want you to spend some time on this chart. I know you're only going to get a couple minutes, but we're going to work on that chart for the next few minutes. But before you do, take a look at the end of your section where there's a board project calendar. This is just an example. This is just an example of things that the board members can be doing that will impact and interface with the executive director. It is just a sample. Repeat after me. This is just an example. Are you going to Xerox this when you go home and give it to your whole board? Yeah. No. This is the result. This is the result of planning, discussion, prayer, hand-wringing, what should we do in my affiliate, all right? And this is the kind of thing you'll want to come up with your board, but it's given you an example of areas where we interface together. Not everywhere where we interface, but areas where we do. So what I'd like you to do with the chart that I did give you, the one that's under organizational goals, finances and fundraising, board functioning, staffing, community relations, I would like you to do two things. First of all, and we're going to spend almost 10 minutes, about 8 minutes on this. First of all, pick one area that you want to discuss as an affiliate, and hopefully you'll come to an agreement on that before 8 minutes. So pick that one area that you're going to look at, and then under each of those main topics there, or boxes under there where you do work together, talk about how you might, this is just jotting down in the roughest of forms how you might work together, how you might interface, who might be doing what to help each other and so on in each of these areas. For example, organizational goals, provide input to long-range goals. I want you to get down a little bit and say, now how could we really do this? Provide input to long-range goals. Executive director, how about if you talk to us about how it's going in such and such an area? Yeah, I'd also like to provide some goals in such and such an area. Okay, well, which one should we look at first? That's the kind of thing I'm talking about. Now, it's not coming up with a calendar. It's not coming up with measurable objectives or anything at this point. You're just looking at places where you might interface. You might want to take finances and fundraising. You might want to look at board functioning. How are we going to recruit new board members? Board members, what are you going to do? Executive director, what are you going to do? Just jot down some ideas in that box right now, okay? So pick the area and then jot down some ideas in one of those boxes. If you could take out your takeaway sheets right now and mark on there, and you can do these individually, mark on there at least the top 3 things, hopefully 5 things, that you want to continue working on when you leave here regarding the board and the executive director working together. Areas where you need to plan that, work on it, actually do it, whatever. Maybe you need to create board notebooks, who knows. But whatever. Work on this, take a few more minutes. I will tell you when your time is up in this class, but if you want to work longer, you sure can. And I will be around for questions after the class. So again, this was boards and executive directors working together. We looked at the responsibilities and expectations of board members and executive directors. We worked on a project together, and we're forming a rough plan on how to handle that. Took a look at a sample annual calendar. All right, so thank you very much. Work on your takeaway sheets. It's really important to get some stuff down.